أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. يقول الله في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا هديناه السبيل إما شاكرا وإما كفورا. Surah Al-Dahr, also known as Surah Al-Insan, Ayah 3. Surely we have delivered him to a way, but either he becomes grateful or ungrateful. The first of our salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad. The second in honor of Mawlana Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. The third in honor of Fatimah al-Zahra alayha salamullah. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The discussion concerning predestination and free will is one of the most important discussions, as this is a topic that affects each and every one of us. Are our actions predestined by God, or do we have free will in the choices that we make? Or has God predetermined what our future is? There are many schools of thought that have expressed their opinion in this matter and have reached different conclusions. You find one school that comes forward and states that all our actions are predestined already, and that all we are really doing is reaping the rewards of these actions, or otherwise being tested. Another school states that there are enough verses in the Holy Book that show that mankind has been given free will. And therefore, you find that contemporary discussions continue to provide us with a whole host of differing opinions as to whether we are responsible for our actions or whether God has already written everything. From the school of the pessimist, such as the fatalist, all the way to the school of the optimist, which also believe in free will, we find that there are many differing opinions. The fatalists believe that everything is governed through fate. There is no point trying to resist fate, and there's no point trying to be stubborn against fate. And they come forward with what's known as the idol argument, which looks at a person when they are ill, for example, and argue that if the person is fated to recover from an illness, whether a doctor comes to you or not, you will recover. And if you are fated not to recover from an illness, then irrespective whether a doctor comes and visits you or not, you will not recover from that illness. And therefore they believe that it is fated whether you will recover or not recover from an illness. That's the school that comes forward and states that every decision you make is not in your hands. Fate governs your movements. That's one opinion. Then you have the opinion of those who believe in predestination, who come forward and say that God has predestined all of our actions and that we have no choice whatsoever. However, we come and we may have a part of the action, what they call iktisab, acquisition. But otherwise, we don't have anything more than that. Then there's a third school that says, no, God knows about everything that we are going to act, but that does not mean that He is going to get involved in our actions. And therefore, they differentiate between God's attributes with the dimensions of the actions in which the human being lives in. Then you have a fourth school that says that mankind has complete free will. God does not interfere in any of their actions. Mankind has been given the choice to do that which is right and that which is wrong. So we see that there are many differences of opinion in relation to this topic. Predestination was also a tool used by many dictators throughout history, as it was the case with Ibn Ziyad when he said to Sayyidah Zainab alayha salam, "I'm not the one who killed Hussein, bal qatalahu Allah." It was God who killed him. He's the one who decided that Hussein would die in this way. Therefore, God is the one who killed him because He has already predestined everything. Sayyidah Zainab replied, God also gave you free will, and that you had the choice to act that which you acted. On a second level, the idea of predestination can also be a social problem. And oftentimes, we see that in many societies, it may be used as an excuse to act out irreligious acts. This is a disease that affects many societies, where many people, when they go through a bad phase, they place the whole blame upon God, saying that God has predestined me to do these actions. Tonight, I would like to focus on a couple of points. The first, if God knows everything I'm going to act, does this have a bearing on my action or no? Does knowing something interfere in someone's actions or no? The second, are there actions in Islam that can change our destiny or not? And lastly, we will see how Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi used his free will to change on the 10th of Moharrum. But first, we have to come to a realization that rationally, to say that everything is predestined doesn't work. Why? Because it will destroy the justice system which Islam discusses about, because we say that on the Day of Judgment, God will reward those who have done good and punish those who have done bad. Therefore, we would not be able to say that one of usul al-din, one of the pillars of our religion is justice, adala. Justice dictates that God does not punish except somebody who had the free will to perform the act. Otherwise, if God puts someone in hell without giving him a free will, that does not work and that's not acceptable. So then how does God say in the Quran, I guide whoever I want to guide, and I misguide whoever I want to misguide? And that's why many times the problem is the translation, not the verse in the Quran. This is actually the topic I will discuss in tomorrow's lecture, so I will not elaborate too much. But to help us better understand this particular ayah, we have to apply two theological concepts called tawfiq and khidlan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides whoever is looking for His guidance, and Allah keeps in misguidance whoever are not interested in being guided. When our sixth Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq salamullahi alayh was asked, what is the position of Al Muhammad? Are all our actions predestined by God, or do we have a free will? He said that it is in the position between the two of these. We are in the middle of the two of these. They asked him to explain. He said to the person standing in front of him, lift your right leg. The person lifted his right leg. He said, now lift your left leg at the same time. He said, I can't. How can you lift both at the same time? The Imam said, that's the ratio. There are some things you control, There are others that are in control by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One you lift, the other you don't control. In life, there are certain things we control, and there are others we simply don't. Where we're born, our parents, that's predestined and decided already. But my decision about the way I live my life, that's controlled by my free will. From the biggest decisions in your life, in your lives, to the smallest ones, has God not given us the free will to choose our religion, for example? You have all decided to come here tonight to this Husayniyah. That's free will. Deciding that this is more beneficial to our lives and leaving all worldly affairs behind and taking the time to better ourselves and help change our destinies for the better by commemorating these days of sadness. That's free will. When we decide to listen to Quran instead of music, for example, that's also free will. Choosing to spend time with certain friends, that's free will as well. But we have to be careful. Not all our free will is always beneficial to us. We are free to choose, but that's when we have to ask for God's guidance. Inshallah, we are all among the ones that God helps and guides, especially during these sad days of Moharrum, by the grace of Imam al-Hussein. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Going back to our first point, when we come forth and say that God is all-knowing, and every action we're going to perform from now until the day of judgment, but does His knowledge affect our behavior? Because we are recognizing He is all-knowing. At the same time, we recognize that Allah has an attribute, which is the attribute of grace. His grace determined that He gave mankind free will. When you say Allah is all-knowing, and you admit that He has given us free will, it means that these two attributes cannot come together. And you admit that, that's why there's a difference between predeterminism and predestination. Predeterminists say that Allah can see everything. It doesn't mean that He affects the actions of everyone. Whereas the people who believe in predestination say that Allah sees everything, and He is the one who controls all of our actions. Predeterminists say that Allah can see everything. It does not mean that He affects the actions of everyone. It doesn't mean that He writes everything we are going to do. We write our own books. Therefore, there's a possibility of change in that which is written for you. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. As He says in His holy book, I won't change a group of people unless they change themselves. But we have to ask for His guidance. Don't try and tell me I was created this way, this is my fate. And unfortunately, I've heard this many times. And I've heard this with my own two ears. And this is wrong. Is this the excuse we will use when facing the Almighty on the Day of Judgment? We have brothers and sisters amongst us and sitting here tonight and elsewhere. They weren't born Muslims. They weren't born Shia. They had to search for the truth. This is the same courage and strength and free will that Imam Hussein's companions showed in Karbala. So before complaining, let us each ask ourselves, have you taken the first step? Have you asked Allah for His guidance? And has He rejected you? Because of our envy, our hasad towards others sometimes, we sometimes accuse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without realizing it. We accuse Allah of being unfair or unjust, placing the blame on everything and everyone else, including God, before ourselves. And we forget that God's door is always open. And this is exactly what serves the enemies of Ahlul Bayt, the enemies of Imam al-Hussein in Karbala. That's the same mentality. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran teaches us and tells us, stop complaining. Ayah 14 and 15 in Surah Al-Qiyamah, for instance. The resurrection. What does those ayat say? بَلِ الْإِنسَانُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرَةٌ وَلَوْ أَلْقَى مَعَاذِيرَهُ. The meaning of this ayah, and I know the Quran more specifically here relates to and refers to the hereafter, but does it not still apply? Man is evidence against himself. No matter how many excuses you want to give yourself. We each know ourselves better than anyone else. No one can see what's inside us. Even though we give ourselves excuses, deep down inside, we know they are just excuses. As I mentioned in last night's lecture, your niyyah, your intention, plays a huge role. The more pure your intention, the more beautiful and long-lasting and fruitful your reward will be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in numerous places in the Holy Quran, mentions the example of the strong-rooted tree and how it brings us fruitful rewards. The Quran mentions the example of the tree because it is easy for us to relate. You know, our actions are like seeds. If you take good care of the seed, it'll grow to become a tree of which you will benefit. And the rewards can be everlasting. It could easily go for generations. That's if you planted a good seed. But would any one of us eat a rotten fruit? Of course not. Even if it is from our own tree, right? We wouldn't want anything to do with these fruits. Why don't you tell me this is my destiny and I must eat those fruits? Because here we usually smarten up and use our free will and change that fruit for a better one. A bad action, my friends, is that of a bad fruit. It's sad to say that sometimes our actions are even more repulsive than a rotten fruit. Therefore, let's ask God for His guidance. Who amongst us here can say that they are happy with their actions and there's nothing more they need to do to reach heaven? Then why don't we all, starting from tonight, use our free will to change our destinies, as did Al-Hur. On the day of Ashura, you find an opposition army of thousands. And an army on the side of Abu Abdullah of no more than 70. Yet have you ever heard from an army of the 30,000, some people from the 30,000 joined those 70, and no one from those 70 joined the 30,000? Does it mathematically work? Why would you join them? Are you definitely going to be victorious? No, of course not. Unless you use your free will and you ask yourself, will I be responsible for the killing of the son of Fatima al-Zahra? Will I be the one responsible for killing the grandson of Rasulullah? At this moment, you are using your free will to change your destiny. Up until then, you are going towards the punishment unless you say, أُخَيِّرُ نَفْسِي بَيْنَ الْجَنَّةِ وَالنَّارِ. Now I have to make a decision in my life between heaven and hell. That's what Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi went through. On the days leading up to the 10th of Moharrum, whenever you want to know, brothers and sisters, whether you can change your lives, whether you have the free will, look at Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi. He was a day from being cursed, one day away from being cursed by millions. But over one night, he is now revered by millions. Because he used his free will to change the course of his destiny. And it's not that he wasn't a sincere man. On his way to Kufa, he met Imam al-Hussein along the way. The first thing he said to Imam was, would you give us some water? My soldiers are thirsty, and our horses are thirsty. Look at Abu Abdullah. The very enemies who are in front of him, he gives them water so that they may quench their thirst. Al-Hur then thanked the Imam. After that, it was time for prayer, salah. One of his men said, I can lead the prayer. Listen to what he said to him. How can you lead the prayer when the son of Fatima al-Zahra is amongst us? Yet after the prayer, he still wanted to take Imam al-Hussein to Ibn Ziyad, asking the Imam to just give a bay'ah, give allegiance, and all this would be over. When Imam al-Hussein refused, he forced him and his companions to stay in Karbala. But this remained in his heart forever. And on the night of the 10th of Moharrum, he started to ask himself questions. Especially when he heard the cries from the army of Hussein, Al-Atash, Al-Atash. They were calling out, we are thirsty. And the children kept asking for water. He kept on hearing those young children crying. The daughters of Imam al-Hussein, Ruqayya bint al-Hussein, Sukayna bint al-Hussein. He would hear them crying and it started to affect him. He came to Imam al-Hussein covering his face in shame. This takes strength, dear brothers and sisters. This takes guidance from Allah. This takes a strong faith and courage. Not only did he admit he was wrong, he came to Imam al-Hussein covering his face, asking for forgiveness. He was the one of the leaders of the opposition armies. He was no ordinary man. The Imam told him, you are forgiven. He then asked the Imam if he can be the first to fight the enemy, as he felt responsible for keeping the Imam and his companions in Karbala. He was a very brave fighter and defended Imam al-Hussein till his last breath. While falling to the ground, saying, "O peace be upon you, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah." The Imam quickly rode his horse and went to him saying, "You are as your mother named you, a free man." Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.